The void was a silent, black ocean, and his ship was a rusty dinghy. Jax floated in the pilot's cradle of the Scrap King, the steady, familiar thrum of its aging reactor, a lullaby he'd fallen asleep to for a decade. Before him, gripped in the ship's massive, pitted manipulator arms, was his payday, a defunct Markiv communications satellite, its solar panels cracked and hull scarred by micrometeorites. A simple job: haul it to the Ceres depot, collect his credit, and keep the king flying for another month. He took a long pull from a bulb of cold coffee, the bitter taste a small, reliable pleasure. Then the universe shifted. The proximity alarm didn't just blare. It screamed, a sound he'd only ever heard in test sequences. His coffee bulb tumbled, forgotten, as his hands flew across the console, silencing the noise and pulling up the long-range scanner. His blood turned to ice water. The screen, usually a placid field of green dots against black, was dominated by a single, massive, pulsing red icon. It was directly behind him, so close its gravitational shadow was already causing stress alerts to flash across his hull. Integrity monitors. He spun the pilot's chair, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, and looked out the main VIEWPORT. It filled the entire starboard view. A ship so vast and impossibly elegant, it made the Scrap King seem like a speck of dust. It was a seamless, pearl-white teardrop, kilometers long, with no visible engines, weapons, or seams. Soft, internal lights glowed within its hull, pulsing in a slow, rhythmic pattern that felt almost biological. It was beautiful, and it was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. A chime, soft and melodic, echoed through the cockpit. A communication request. The signal type was alien, a complex waveform his computer couldn't even begin to categorize. For a long, breathless moment, he considered hitting the emergency thrusters, dumping the satellite, and making a run for it. But run where? The thing was on him. With a shaking hand, he opened the channel. The voice that filled the cockpit was calm, sonorous, and spoke in flawless, unaccented English. Greetings, solitary vessel. We are the Velaryon Accord. We extend our salutations from the Galactic Core. We come in peace to welcome you to the community of stars. Jax's mind went blank. First contact, and he was the ambassador, sitting in a cockpit that smelled of old sweat and machine oil. Copy that, he managed, his voice a dry croak. This is the independent salvage vessel Scrap King. Jax is my name. You're a little close for comfort. A sound like gentle wind chimes came through the speaker. Our profound apologies, Jax of the Scrap King. Our long-range surveys indicated a pre-warp civilization in this system. We did not anticipate encountering one of your kind so far from your home world. Your vessel, it speaks of a remarkable and tenacious spirit. Jax let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. They thought he was an explorer, a pioneer. They saw his patched-up hull, an ancient fusion torch, and saw bravery, not poverty. A wild, opportunistic thought began to push aside his fear. The first human to make contact. The finder's fee alone from the Earth government would be astronomical. The salvage rights on any shared technology. He'd never have to work another day in his life. Yeah, he said, forcing a note of awshucks humility into his voice. Tenacious. That's us humans, so. Welcome to the neighborhood, I guess. Your welcome is gratefully accepted, the voice replied. The honor is ours. We would be deeply privileged if you would consent to dock with our vessel, the Luminance. We have knowledge and wonders to share about the galaxy you are now joining. Dock. With an alien ship. Every survival instinct he had screamed in protest. But the Scrap King's tactical readout was a flat line. If they wanted him dead, he'd already be a cloud of expanding plasma. And the payoff was too big to ignore. I'd be honored, Jax said, modulating his tone to sound suitably humble and overwhelmed. But my docking systems are pretty archaic. Might not play nice with with whatever that is. He gestured vaguely at the viewport. Technological compatibility is a simple matter, the Velaryon assured him. We will extend a magnetic coupling conduit. Please deactivate any defensive measures and follow the guidance beacons. Jax snorted softly. Defensive measures. He toggled off the running lights and the external comms array for show. Powering down now, a section of the pearlescent hull, smooth as liquid. Our eyes opened without a sound. Inside, a tunnel of soft, blue light beckoned. Taking a firm grip on the controls, Jax nudged the Scrap King forward. The transition was jarring. His ship, a hulking mass of welded steel and carbon scoring, suddenly looked grotesquely crude and dirty inside the Valarian vessel. It was like steering a garbage scow into a crystal cathedral. When he sat down with a soft clang, a group of Valarians was already waiting by the airlock. They were tall and willowy, with skin that held a soft, silver luminescence and large, liquid eyes the color of twilight. They moved with a fluid grace that made Jax feel like a clumsy bear. Their leader, who introduced himself as Lorik, wore a simple, gray robe that seemed to drink the light. "Welcome, Jax," Lorik said. His voice as warm and calming as it had been over the comms. "You are the first of your species to set foot upon a Valarian ship. This is a moment we will all remember." Jax cycled the airlock, the grinding of his ship's mechanisms loud and vulgar in the serene space. He stepped out, his heavy magnetic boots clomping on the flawless, glowing floor. He made a show of looking around, his eyes wide, letting his jaw hang slightly open. It's unbelievable," he stammered, laying the awe on thick. "We have nothing like this." "Nothing at all," Lorik smiled, a gentle, paternal expression. He placed a hand on Jax's shoulder. His touch was light and cool. "Do not be overwhelmed, my friend. The galaxy is vast, but you are not alone in it now. We are here to guide you. Come, let us show you what awaits beyond your solitary sun." As Lorik led him away from the Scrap King, Jax glanced back at his ship. It sat in the center of the majestic hangar, a squat, ugly, beautiful testament to human stubbornness. A pang of something like guilt twisted in his gut. They were so earnest, so condescendingly kind. They thought they were shepherding a lost child. They had no idea what they'd just brought aboard. They had welcomed him with open arms, and as he followed his host into the heart of the luminance, Jax had the sinking feeling they were going to regret their hospitality very, very soon. Alara stood in the observation gallery, her 3 slender fingers resting lightly on the cool, crystalline railing. Below, in the main hangar, the human vessel sat like a dark, ugly stain on the luminance's pristine floor. It was all harsh angles and scarred metal, a brute object in a world of flowing light and soft curves. And the human himself, Jax, he moved with a heavy, grounded gait, his body language shouting a kind of pragmatic coarseness she found both fascinating and slightly alarming. She was to be his guide, his translator, not just of language. The universal interpreter handled that with ease, but of culture, of context. She was to gently usher this primitive being into the glorious light of the galactic community. It was a sacred duty, one she had prepared for her entire life. Yet, as she watched him follow Lorik, a strange feeling settled in her core. It wasn't pity, exactly, it was anticipation. Their first session was in the biosanctum, a vast chamber where flora from 100 worlds thrived under an artificial sky. The air was thick with the scent of alien blossoms. Alara began with the basics, her voice a soft, patient melody. "The Galactic Accord is an alliance of over 300 sentient species," she explained, gesturing to a holographic map that shimmered in the air between them. "We have maintained peace for 5,000 cycles through shared knowledge, mutual respect, and the guiding principles of the first accords." Jax nodded, his eyes scanning the map. 300. That's a lot of folks. How do you decide stuff? Who's in charge? Alara smiled. "There's no single in charge. We govern by consensus. Each species has a voice. It is a system of harmony, not dominance." "Consensus," Jax repeated, the word sounding foreign and clunky in his mouth. "Must take a long time to get anything done. What happens when someone breaks the rules?" "The Accord has protocols for mediation and, if necessary, nonviolent deterrence. Our shield technology, for instance, is a purely defensive measure. It is the foundation of our safety." Jax's eyes, a startlingly ordinary shade of brown, flickered with something she couldn't quite place. "Shields, huh? What's there? Power source? How do they handle sustained kinetic impact?" "Not that I know anything about that," he added quickly, offering a disarming, lopsided grin. Alara's smile tightened slightly. The principles are complex. Suffice to say, they are more than adequate. They are a product of our advanced harmonic science. She decided to change the subject, guiding him to a display of the Valarian history of art, showing the evolution of their light sculptures from simple forms to the intricate, emotionally resonant works of the modern era. Jax looked at the shimmering, abstract shapes. Pretty, he said, his tone neutral. How do you make them? What's the energy cost? Could you weaponize that light? Alara blinked, her delicate silver brows furrowing. Weaponize? No. It is art. It is for beauty. For the soul. Right, of course. The soul, Jack said, but his eyes were calculating, measuring the intensity of the light, the way it held its form. He wasn't seeing beauty. He was seeing engineering. Frustration began to prickle at Alara's calm. He was missing the point, consistently, profoundly. She showed him the great library of memory crystals, where the entire recorded history of 100 species was stored in light and sound. He asked about data compression rates and vulnerability to electromagnetic pulses. She took him to the meditation chambers, where harmonious frequencies promoted mental clarity and peace. He asked if the same frequencies could be used to disrupt an enemy's communications. Each of her wonders was met not with awe, but with a series of sharp, practical, and unsettlingly perceptive questions. His mind wasn't primitive. It was different. It was a mind that looked at a flower and saw its structural weaknesses, that looked at a shield and immediately searched for the crack. It was a mind shaped by struggle, by the need to overcome, not just to coexist. During a break, as they shared a meal of synthesized nutritional paste which Jax consumed with a grimace, he tried to hide. He looked at her, his gaze suddenly soft, losing its analytical edge. This is all incredible, Alara. Really, it's just a lot to take in. Where I'm from, we don't have all this. He gestured around the serene, softly lit room. We have to make do. We have to fix things with what we have. It makes you see the world a certain way, and in that moment, she saw it too. Not a primitive, but a survivor. The grease under his fingernails wasn't a mark of ignorance, but of a life spent keeping a complex, unforgiving machine alive in the void. The calluses on his hands were a map of labor. A strange, warm feeling bloomed in her chest, pushing aside her frustration. It was compassion, but something more, something dangerously close to affection. Tell me, she said softly, leaning forward. Tell me about making do. So he did. He told her about jury-rigging a faulty oxygenator with spare parts from a food dispenser, about navigating an asteroid field using nothing but visual sightings and gut instinct when his primary sensors failed, about the constant, quiet battle against entropy that was life on the edge of human space. His stories were not of harmony and beauty, but of grit, ingenuity, and a stubborn refusal to die. And Alara listened, truly listened. She began to understand that humanity's primitive technology wasn't a lack of advancement. It was a different path entirely. Where the Accord sought perfection and harmony, humanity sought resilience and adaptability. Their strength wasn't in their shields, but in their ability to rebuild them from scrap when they shattered. That night, in her quarters, Alara looked out at the star-dusted blackness. The nagging doubt had solidified into a cold certainty. Her people had made a catastrophic error in judgment. They had looked at the rust on Jax's ship and seen weakness. They had looked at his practical questions and seen a simple mind, struggling to comprehend their greatness. But she had looked into his eyes and seen a depth, a sharp, unyielding intelligence that frightened and thrilled her in equal measure. They had come to welcome a child into the galaxy. They had, instead, invited a wolf into their garden, and they were too busy admiring their own reflection in its eyes to see the teeth. And the most terrifying part, the part that made her heart ache with a strange, forbidden longing, was that she was starting to admire the wolf. Reese considered his work a form of poetry. Each plant in his arboretum was a syllable, each bed a stanza, and the entire, sprawling chamber a silent, living epic of Valarian harmony. The air hummed with a low, melodic frequency that encouraged growth, and the plants themselves responded, their leaves shimmering with internal light, their crystalline petals shifting through soft, radiant colors. It was the heart of the luminance, a testament to a culture that nurtured life as its highest art form. And today, He was to show it to the primitive. He watched as Lorik and the translator, Alara, led the human Jax into the chamber. The man's heavy footfalls were an affront to the sanctity of the space. Rhys held himself with the quiet dignity of a master botanist, his silver robes immaculate, his expression a carefully curated mask of patient benevolence. "Welcome to the Arboretum," Rhys said, his voice a soft chime. "Here we preserve the most beautiful and delicate flora from across the Accord. Each specimen is a unique expression of cosmic life, attuned to the universal harmonies." Jax looked around, his eyes not wide with wonder, but narrowed, scanning. He pointed a thick, calloused finger at a cluster of flowers that chimed softly like crystal bells. "They make noise. How?" "Their crystalline structure resonates with the chamber's foundational frequency," Rhys explained, allowing a hint of pride to color his tone. "It is a natural symphony, when we have learned to cultivate, not force." Jax grunted. He then gestured to a tree with leaves like spun silver. "And that?" "The leaves look metallic." "They edible?" Rhys's mask slipped for a fraction of a second. "Edible? No. They are for contemplation. For beauty." He shared a brief, pained look with Lorik. This was worse than he had anticipated. The creature saw art and thought of consumption. He led them deeper. To his pride and joy, the area blossom. It was a magnificent, trumpet-shaped flower made of what seemed like solid, clear crystal, with veins of pulsing gold light running through it. Its song was a pure, high note that seemed to cleanse the very air. Currently, however, the note was slightly flat, and the gold veins pulsed erratically. "The area blossom is particularly sensitive," Rhys said, his voice laced with concern. "It requires perfect balance. This one has been struggling. Our diagnostics are unable to pinpoint the imbalance. The harmonic resonance is simply off." A genuine sadness touched his features. To lose such a specimen was a profound failure. Jax stepped closer, peering at the flower. He didn't look sad or odd. He looked like a mechanic looking at a sputtering engine. He leaned in, sniffing the air around it. What are you doing?" Rhys asked, a note of alarm in his voice. "Smells sharp, acidic," Jax muttered, mostly to himself. He looked down at the soil, a shimmering, opalescent gel. "Your dirt. What's its base?" "It is a proprietary nutrient medium, balanced to a precise pH for optimal crystalline growth," Rhys said, his tone growing frosty. Jax nodded, then did something that made Rhys's blood run cold. He reached out with a dirty fingernail and scraped a tiny bit of the soil gel. He rubbed it between his thumb and forefinger. "Stop that," Rhys snapped, his composure shattering. "You will contaminate it." Lorik placed a calming hand on Rhys's arm. "Peace, RHYS. Our guest is merely curious. This isn't curiosity, Lorik. This is vandalism." Rhys hissed. Jax ignored them, licking his finger where the soil had been. He grimaced. "Yep, it's gone alkaline. Your proprietary medium is out of whack. The crystal lattice in the flower can't form right if the soil's too basic. It's like trying to grow salt crystals in vinegar." The Arboretum fell silent, save for the discordant hum of the dying aria blossom. Rhys stared at him, a mixture of fury and disbelief on his face. "That is a profoundly ignorant statement. Our systems are monitored down to the quantum level. The medium is perfect. Your monitors are wrong," Jax said with a shrug that was infuriatingly casual. "Happens all the time with hydroponics. You get a bacterial bloom. It shifts the pH. You need to lower it. Acidify the soil. And how, pray tell, would a salvage operator propose we do that?" Rhys asked, the title a venomous sneer. Jax looked at him, his brown eyes utterly calm. "On my ship, I've got an emergency kit. There's a bottle of citric acid powder in there, for cleaning mineral deposits off valves. A pinch of that, dissolved in water, should bring your pH right down." Rhys felt a laugh, cold and brittle, escape his lips. "You propose to pour a cleaning agent onto the root system of the most delicate specimen in the Accord? You would kill it instantly. It'll be dead in 2 days if you don't," Jax replied, his gaze unwavering. "Your way isn't working. Sometimes you gotta fix the problem, not just admire it." The standoff was palpable. Alara watched, her heart pounding, her eyes darting between the furious Rhys and the implacable Jax. She saw the truth in Jax's simple, brutal logic. Their perfect systems had failed. His crude, pragmatic solution might be the only chance. "Lorik," Rhys pleaded. "You cannot be considering this." Lorik was silent for a long time, his amethyst eyes studying the struggling flower, then the human. He saw the absolute, unshakable confidence in Jax's posture. It wasn't the arrogance of a fool. It was the certainty of a man who had fixed 1,000 broken things with whatever was at hand. "Fetch the compound," Lorik said quietly. Rhys looked as if he had been struck. "Lorik, now, Rhys," with a sound of pure anguish. Rhys turned and stormed off to retrieve the soil sensor, to prove the human wrong once and for all. Jax simply returned to the Scrap King and came back with a small, unlabeled plastic bottle. He measured a minuscule amount of white powder into a flask of purified water. His movements economical and precise. Rhys returned, a handheld scanner in his hand. "The pH reads 7.8, perfectly within acceptable parameters for—" "Your parameters are wrong," Jax interrupted, not unkindly. He gently poured the diluted solution around the base of the aria blossom. Rhys watched, horrified, expecting the flower to blacken and wither on the spot. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the discordant hum of the blossom began to steady. The wavering golden veins in the crystal petals grew brighter, their pulse slowing to a strong, regular rhythm. The flat, sour note it had been emitting sharpened, cleared, and rose into the pure, perfect tone it was meant to hold. The aria blossom was singing, truly singing, for the first time in weeks. Rhys stood frozen, the scanner falling from his numb fingers and clattering on the floor. The readout now flashed a new number, 6.9, the perfect, ideal pH for crystalline flora. He looked from the thriving flower to the human, who was wiping his hands on his trousers as if he'd just fixed a leaky pipe. The Valarians' unshakable confidence in their own superior science had just been broken, not by a weapon, but by a pinch of cleaning powder from a rust bucket ship. And in the ringing silence filled with the blossom's beautiful song, Rhys felt not gratitude, but the first, cold trickle of a terrifying new understanding. They had profoundly misjudged what primitive truly meant.